So I just wanted to make a quick video today, um, mainly about releasing tension, releasing fear. Which again, we always talk about that. Facing fear and anxiety, which almost inevitably comes up in everybody's life, right? Kind of facing that in a new way, facing it and moving through it without responding in the way that we are, I guess you could say, programmed to respond by culture. In other words, treating the fear radically, whether that means talking back at it, moving around, crazily, yelling at it, making playful noises at it, or simply being with it, um, and kind of floating through it, as both David Hawkins and Claire Weeks talk about so eloquently. But what I want to touch upon specifically today is I was in a seminar, small container setting last week with a teacher that I like, and she was leading an exercise on, basically releasing fear, or a different way to approach fear. And I just wanted to comment on it because despite me liking this teacher and understanding what she was saying, I have kind of a different approach to it than I think this specific exercise was getting at. This specific exercise was saying basically that, you're breathing fully and deeply, right? You're breathing in and out, and then you're feeling where you feel the fear. Where in the body that is, where you feel that tightness or that constriction. You're really feeling that, which is, again, like what Hawkins talks about a lot, right? And then you are going to the other side and you're releasing all of it, and you're going to where you feel all the release. So you go from feeling that deep fear to that release, and then you go, it's like a polarity exercise where you feel the fear, feel the release, go back to the fear, go back to the release, over and over again, and this neutralizes it, right? And you might have heard of an exercise like this before. There's several exercises like this, where you go from one extreme to the other. Now, my criticism of this, even though it works well for many people, personally, I've always found, and I've also found for clients I've worked with, it's too mental. It's too in your head a lot of the time when you do an exercise like this. Personally, I cannot really feel the fear, feel that tightness and constriction in my body, like let's say in my chest. Because, like, for me, when I feel fearful and anxiety, a lot of time it manifests in my chest, right? I can't feel that, really feel into that fully in the way that Hawkins and other people talk about, and then just turn that off. That's like, it doesn't work like that. I can't go from there to feeling released and open. I have to let that happen naturally, and I can't force it. You know, Often if I feel uncomfortable and I want to release this discomfort or move through this discomfort, I have to sit with it for 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes before it even begins to loosen. The idea of, being at this tightness of like a 9 or 10 on a 0 to 10 scale, and then going down to 0 or 1 just by breathing in and out. I don't, that's not relevant to me. I cannot relate to that. I cannot do that. I think that is too mental. I think if you claim you can do that, really, for most of us at least, it's that you're like at like a constricted, tight, like maybe like a 5 or 6 on the scale, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to release that and release all of it, and you release all of it mentally within a minute or two by breathing. I think you've maybe gone to like down to a 2 or 3. In other words, I don't really think you're playing with your whole spectrum of feeling open and released, or very, fearful, in terms of your body. Um, and this is a big issue in my opinion. Like, people do these mental exercises where they're like in a kind of a meditative state, and they think that they're like going from imprisoned to free, and it's too mental. As I always talk about, it's what's going on underneath that is really transformative, and that takes more time. I mean, Hawkins talks about for like when he had a significant amount of fear, sometimes feeling into that fear, into that, constricted, tight feeling for weeks on end, or at least several days on end. When you are releasing a constricted feeling within you and you're in a tough situation, it's probably not going to happen that quickly. You have to let it play out. That's how the process plays out. That also, in my experiences, is how manifesting stuff plays out. Stuff you really want, it's not like, all right, I'm going to visualize for a couple weeks and it's just going to show up. I know that works for plenty of people, but it doesn't work for the majority of people. It's more like you have to, keep on doing what you're doing and let it play out over several months or longer a lot of the time. We aren't patient enough. And in the same way we aren't patient enough when it comes to manifesting things, we aren't patient enough about releasing these constricted, tight feelings. We say, oh, we're just going to get rid of them by breathing in and out. And it's not that simple usually. You want something that's simple that will let you get rid of that feeling quickly. Do what I recommend in The Joy of Not Thinking. Jump around crazily. Hop up and down like a monkey. Go. That's how to get rid of that constriction quickly. But when you do that, as great as that stuff is, and obviously if you're following me, I'm a huge proponent of that stuff. As great as that stuff is, that's not going to release that feeling forever. It's probably going to come back, right? That's more like a quick tool to get you out of a bind when you're tight, and you're like, I have to change how I feel. But if you're trying to work with these deeply ingrained feelings of fear and anxiety that you feel in the body, you have to be patient. You have to let it play out. And a polarity exercise can work very well, but I'm just saying that I think a lot of these polarity exercises, when people say, oh, I'm going from a lot of, tension and constriction down to total freedom within a couple minutes just by breathing and, using your imagination or whatever, I don't buy it. I think it's really like you were at like a 7 in terms of stress and you got down to like a 2, which is great. Don't get me wrong if that works for you, but I just don't think it's that whole breadth. I've got a video, I will link to it in the description or up above, about I call it like your emotional spectrum, like how we go from 0 to 60 emotionally and different ways of doing that. And I think that's relevant to this discussion. And again, as always, I'm preaching patience and common sense when it comes to facing difficult emotions and fears. One thing that I've learned for myself recently, like in the last, year or even less time than that, is just the power of not only sitting with these difficult feelings, but genuinely understanding a little bit why they're there on like an emotional level. In other words, becoming more friendly with them. Like for me, becoming more friendly with these feelings in my chest, when they arise. So if I become more friendly, which I have become, with like these feelings of stress and tightness that I feel in my chest, if I'm more friendly with them and no longer look at them, as an arch nemesis, if I don't look at them antagonistically, but in a friendly way, it's a different relationship and my life changes. And I feel better. I feel better when that feeling's there. I'm okay with it. Big, big difference. That's the magic of doing a lot of this stuff on just a practical, mundane level. Yeah, hugely valuable to practice, in my opinion. Again, you don't have to do any of this stuff. These are all just different approaches and ways of working with yourself. But being patient when not only trying to manifest something, but also just being patient when dealing with stressful feelings in your body is hugely important, and in my opinion will help you actually manifest a better life gradually and powerfully. So I hope that this was helpful.